The Grand Metropolitan Hotel rose like a monolith against the dawn, its glass facade catching the first rays of sunlight and scattering them across the city. Inside, the lobby pulsed with the rhythm of power. Executives in tailored suits barked into earpieces, their polished shoes clicking against marble floors that gleamed under the weight of wealth. The air carried the faint scent of espresso and fresh lilies, arranged in towering vases that flanked the reception desk. To the guests, this was a stage for million-dollar deals and fleeting prestige. To Emily Carter, it was a labyrinth where she moved unseen, a ghost in a crisp housekeeper's uniform. At 6:30 a.m., Emily pushed her cleaning cart through the service corridor, the wheels squeaking faintly against the linoleum. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, her hands calloused from years of scrubbing tiles and folding towels. To the CEOs and diplomats rushing past, she was as unremarkable as the crystal chandeliers overhead, essential but invisible. Yet beneath her practiced smile, Emily carried a secret that burned like an ember in her chest. Her fingers, rough from labor, could weave stories in the air, crafting conversations in American Sign Language with a grace that rivaled any poet's pen. It was a skill born of necessity, honed for her younger brother, Michael, who had lost his hearing at 12. But here, in the hotel's gleaming ecosystem, it was a talent she buried, used only in stolen moments. In the employee locker room, Emily changed into her uniform, the polyester scratching against her skin. She caught her reflection in the smudged mirror, hazel eyes sharp with quiet determination, lips pressed into a line that hid her dreams. 3 years ago, she had been a linguistics student, 1 semester shy of a degree in ASL interpretation. She had envisioned a life bridging worlds, teaching at the deaf school downtown, or translating for families like hers. But when their father lost his job and their mother's illness drained their savings, Emily had made a choice that felt like a betrayal of her own soul. She dropped out, trading textbooks for a cleaning cart, ensuring Michael's future while her own slipped into shadow. Now, as she maneuvered her cart toward the executive floors, Emily's fingers twitched, itching to sign. In the service elevator, alone for a fleeting moment, she let them dance. Her hands traced the words of a CNN broadcast she had glimpsed in the lobby, global tensions, economic shifts, translating them into fluid gestures. It was her private rebellion, a reminder of the person she might have been. The elevator dinged, and she stilled her hands, stepping into the 40th floor's hushed corridor. Here, the air was cooler, the carpets thicker, the stakes higher. These were the suites of the elite, where every detail had to be flawless. Her first task was room 4247, a corner suite reserved for Caleb Morrison, CEO of TechBridge Solutions. Emily knocked, her knuckles soft against the mahogany door. No response. She swiped her master key and entered, the room's silence wrapping around her like a cloak. The suite was pristine, barely touched, a closed laptop on the desk, a single coffee cup gone cold. But what stopped Emily was the figure on the private balcony. Caleb Morrison stood with his back to the glass, his broad shoulders tense against the city skyline. At 33, he was a titan of assistive technology, his AI-powered hearing aids celebrated in magazines Emily could not afford to buy. Yet something about his posture, slumped, almost broken, stirred a flicker of recognition in her. Emily paused, her duster hovering over the desk. She should have moved on, kept to her routine. But then she saw it. Caleb's hands, trembling slightly, forming a halting gesture. It was rough, unpracticed but unmistakable, the ASL sign for help. Her breath caught. She knew that sign intimately, had taught it to Michael years ago when his world went silent. Without thinking, she stepped closer to the glass door, her heart pounding. Caleb was alone, his gaze fixed on the horizon, unaware of her presence. For a moment, Emily stood frozen, torn between the rules of her invisible role and the instinct to reach out. Before she could decide, a sharp voice cut through the suite. "Carter, what are you doing?" Sarah Collins, the housekeeping manager, stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. Her sharp features were drawn tight, her eyes narrowing at Emily's hesitation. Sarah was 42. Her career stalled at middle management, her demeanor a mix of efficiency and thinly veiled frustration. "You know better than to linger in a guest's room." Emily's cheeks flushed. "I was just checking the balcony, ma'am. Making sure everything's in order." She lowered her gaze, her hands clasping the duster to hide their tremor. Sarah's lips pursed. "You have 10 rooms to finish before noon. Don't waste time daydreaming." She turned on her heel, her heels clicking down the corridor. Emily exhaled, the moment with Caleb slipping away like sand. She glanced at the balcony one last time, but he had not moved, his hands now still, the sign for help, a fleeting ghost in the morning light. As she resumed her work, Emily's mind churned. Why would a man like Caleb Morrison, a visionary who had built an empire, use ASL? And why did he seem so lost? The questions clung to her, sharp and insistent, as she polished the suite's surfaces to a mirror shine. She did not know it yet, but that fleeting gesture had cracked open a door, one that would lead her from the shadows of the Grand Metropolitan to a world she had never dared imagine. The glass door between Emily Carter and Caleb Morrison was more than a physical barrier. It was a threshold between worlds. On one side stood Emily, her housekeeper's uniform a badge of invisibility, her hands still tingling from the sight of Caleb's faltering ASL gesture. On the other, Caleb, silhouetted against the city's sprawl, seemed to carry the weight of his empire in the slump of his shoulders. The Grand Metropolitan's 40th floor was silent, save for the distant hum of the city below, but Emily's pulse roared in her ears. She should have turned away, resumed her duties, forgotten the fleeting glimpse of vulnerability in a man who belonged to a different universe. Yet her feet remained rooted, her eyes fixed on the incomplete sign for help that lingered in her memory. Emily's fingers brushed the glass, cool and unyielding. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting Sarah Collins to reappear, her sharp voice slicing through this reckless moment. The suite was empty, the corridor beyond quiet. She took a breath, steadying herself, and tapped gently on the door. The sound was soft, almost swallowed by the vastness of the room, but Caleb's head snapped up, his gaze locking onto hers through the glass. For a heartbeat, they were suspended. Two strangers, one a titan of industry, the other a shadow in the hotel's machinery, connected by a language neither had expected to share. Caleb's eyes, a stormy gray, widened with surprise, then softened with something deeper. Recognition, perhaps, or relief. He stepped toward the door, his movements deliberate, as if approaching a fragile thing that might shatter. Emily's hands moved before her mind could catch up, signing with a clarity born of years of practice. "Good morning. You are not alone." The words hung in the air, their gestures fluid and deliberate, a bridge across the divide. Caleb's expression shifted, the tension in his jaw easing, his lips parting as if to speak. He raised his hands, hesitant, and signed back. "Thank you." His movements were clumsy, unpracticed, but the sincerity in them struck Emily like a physical force. The moment broke as Caleb opened the glass door, the morning breeze carrying the faint scent of his cologne, cedar and steel. "You know ASL," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. It was not a question, but an acknowledgement, as if he had stumbled upon a rare artifact in the midst of his polished world. Emily nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, sir. My brother Michael is deaf. I learned for him." She clasped her hands behind her back, suddenly aware of her uniform, the cleaning cart waiting in the corner, the audacity of speaking to a guest like this. "I am sorry if I overstepped. I saw your gesture and I thought—" She trailed off, unsure how to explain the instinct that had propelled her forward. "You did not overstep," Caleb said firmly, his gaze steady. You saw something most people would have missed. That matters. He paused, studying her as if seeing her for the first time, not as a housekeeper, but as a person with a story. What is your name? Emily Carter, sir. Her voice was steady, but her mind raced. This was not how her mornings at the Grand Metropolitan unfolded. She was meant to be invisible, not standing on a balcony with a CEO who looked at her as if she held answers he had been chasing. Emily, he repeated, testing the name. I am Caleb Morrison, and I could use someone like you on my team. The words were casual, almost offhand, but they landed like a thunderclap. Emily blinked, certain she had misheard. Before she could respond, a phone buzzed on the desk inside, its vibration cutting through the moment. Caleb glanced at it, his expression darkening. I have to take this. But we will talk again, Emily. Soon. He stepped back into the suite, leaving her alone on the balcony, the city's pulse thrumming beneath her feet. That evening, Emily sat at the worn kitchen table in her family's apartment, the fluorescent light casting harsh shadows across the linoleum. The business card Caleb had slipped her before she left the suite lay before her, its embossed letters glinting. Caleb Morrison, CEO, TechBridge Solutions. She traced the edges, the weight of possibility heavy in her fingers. Across the table, Michael, 17 and lanky, hunched over his calculus textbook, his dark eyes flicking to her with curiosity. His hands moved in a quick flurry of ASL. You are quiet tonight. What is wrong? Emily sighed, her own hands rising to respond. Something happened at work. A guest saw me signing. He offered me a job. She explained the encounter, her gestures slowing as she described Caleb's gesture, the balcony, the promise of soon. Michael's eyes widened, his textbook forgotten. That is incredible, Em, he signed, his face breaking into a grin. This is what you were meant to do? You have to say yes. His enthusiasm was infectious, but Emily's chest tightened with a familiar fear. I am not qualified, Michael, she signed, her movements sharp. I never finished college. I am a housekeeper, not a corporate consultant. What if I fail? The words felt like a confession, laying bare the doubt that had haunted her since she abandoned her degree. She had sacrificed her dreams to keep their family afloat, but the cost was a belief that she no longer belonged in the world she had once aspired to. Michael's expression softened, his hands steady as he signed. You know more about ASL than anyone I know. You understand what it is like to live with someone deaf, to need this language. That is worth more than a degree. He paused, his gaze piercing. You gave up your dream so I could chase mine. Maybe it is time to chase yours. Emily looked away, her eyes stinging. Michael was right. But the fear of wanting something so fiercely, of having it ripped away, was a weight she could not shake. She tucked the business card into her pocket, the decision unresolved, and stood to clear the dishes, the clink of plates a grounding rhythm in the quiet apartment. The next morning, Emily was restocking towels in the service corridor when Mrs. Judith Harper approached, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun, her eyes sharp with the wisdom of 32 years at the Grand Metropolitan. Judith was more than a supervisor. She was a quiet force, her warmth tempered by a pragmatism born of watching countless dreams fade in the hotel's shadow. She leaned against the wall, folding her arms. You look like you are carrying the world on your shoulders, Emily. What is it? Emily hesitated, then recounted the balcony encounter, her voice low to avoid the other housekeeper's ears. Judith listened, her expression unreadable, but her eyes gleamed with something like pride. That is no small thing, a man like Caleb Morrison noticing you, she said. But you are scared, are you not? Emily nodded, her throat tight. What if I am not enough? What if I step into his world and fall? Judith's lips curved into a faint smile. When I was your age, I wanted to be a chef. Had a knack for it, too. But I let fear, and other people's doubts, keep me here, folding towels instead of plating desserts. Do not make my mistake, Emily. If this man sees something in you, it is because it is there. She squeezed Emily's shoulder, her touch firm. The question is, are you brave enough to see it too? Emily stood in the corridor long after Judith left, the towels forgotten in her arms. Caleb's words echoed in her mind. We will talk again, soon. And with them, a spark of possibility she could not extinguish. But as she returned to her cart, the weight of Sarah's warning, Michael's hope, and her own doubt pressed against her, a storm brewing in the quiet of her invisible world. The Grand Metropolitan's service corridor was a world of muted grays, its fluorescent lights buzzing faintly as Emily Carter pushed her cleaning cart toward the elevator. The morning had unfolded with mechanical precision, towels folded, tiles scrubbed, suites restored to flawless order, but her mind was elsewhere, tethered to the balcony encounter with Caleb Morrison. His business card burned a hole in her pocket, its promise of a different life both exhilarating and terrifying. She had not called him, not yet, her courage faltering each time she reached for her phone. The weight of her routine, the safety of invisibility, held her in place, even as Michael's words, "Maybe it is time to chase yours," echoed in her heart. At 10:45 a.m., as Emily restocked her cart with fresh linens, Mrs. Judith Harper appeared, her expression a mix of urgency and unease. "Emily, you are needed on the 47th floor, executive offices, now." Her voice was clipped, her usual warmth overshadowed by something Emily could not place. Concern, perhaps, or caution. Emily's stomach twisted. The executive floor? Why? Housekeepers were rarely summoned beyond their assigned floors, and never to the corporate sanctum where the hotel's elite operated. A summons like this meant trouble, a guest complaint, a mistake, or worse. Judith's eyes softened, but she offered no answers. Just go. They are waiting. She gestured toward the service elevator, her hand steady, but her gaze heavy with unspoken thoughts. Emily nodded, her pulse quickening as she smoothed her uniform and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed with a soft thud, and the ascent felt endless, each floor a reminder of the distance between her world and the one she was entering. When the doors opened, the 47th floor was a revelation. The corridor was vast, its walls lined with frosted glass and sleek metal, the air scented with leather and polished wood. A receptionist, her smile practiced and impersonal, directed Emily to a corner office. The nameplate read, Caleb Morrison, CEO, TechBridge Solutions. Emily's breath caught. This was no disciplinary meeting. This was about the balcony, the sign, the fleeting connection she had tried to dismiss as a fluke. She knocked softly, her knuckles barely grazing the door, and a voice called, "Come in." Caleb sat behind an imposing desk, his gray suit immaculate, his stormy eyes lifting from a stack of papers to meet hers. The office was a chaos of innovation. Whiteboards scrawled with diagrams, prototype devices scattered across a conference table, screens flickering with complex code. Yet Caleb's presence anchored the room, his intensity tempered by the same vulnerability she had glimpsed on the balcony. "Emily," he said, gesturing to a chair, "please, sit." She perched on the edge, her back rigid, hands folded in her lap. Everything about her posture screamed she did not belong, but her eyes held his, steady and searching. "Mr. Morrison," she began, her voice low, "I am sorry if I crossed a line yesterday. I saw your gesture, and I wanted to help." "Do not apologize," Caleb said, his tone firm but kind. "You saw something I have kept hidden for years. That is not a small thing." He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. "Your name is Emily Carter, yes?" "Yes, sir." And you learned ASL for your brother, Michael, who lost his hearing in an accident. It was not a question, but a statement delivered with a certainty that unnerved her. How did he know? Had he asked about her, investigated her background? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but his next words dispelled it. I asked Judith Harper about you. She speaks highly of your character, your skill. She said you were studying to be an interpreter before circumstances changed. Emily's cheeks flushed. Yes, sir. I was in my final semester when I had to drop out. Family needed me. This job, it pays the bills. Her voice was steady, but the words carried the weight of her sacrifice, her mother's medical bills, Michael's future, her own dreams buried beneath the necessity of survival. Caleb nodded, his expression unreadable. And yet you practice ASL in secret, translating news broadcasts, communicating with an expertise most professionals would envy. That is not the mark of someone who has given up. He paused, his gaze piercing. Emily, I am developing new AI tools for the deaf community, technology that could change how people communicate. I need someone who understands ASL not just as a language, but as a lifeline, someone who knows the human side of it. I want you to consult on this project. The words hit like a tidal wave, sweeping away her carefully constructed defenses. Emily stared, her mind scrambling to process the offer. Mr. Morrison, I am not qualified. I never finished my degree. I am a housekeeper, not a consultant. Her hands twisted in her lap, betraying the panic rising in her chest. This was a dream, a fantasy, something that happened to other people, people with credentials, confidence, a place in the world. You are a person with rare expertise, Caleb countered, his voice steady. You learned ASL to connect with your brother, to navigate his world. That lived experience is exactly what my team needs. Degrees are paper. Understanding is everything. He slid a tablet across the desk, its screen displaying a prototype interface. This is our AI. It recognizes ASL signs, but it struggles with nuance, context. I believe you can help us fix that. Part-time to start, so you can keep your job here if you need to. What do you say? Emily's mouth went dry. She wanted to say yes, to seize the chance to reclaim a piece of the life she had abandoned. But fear clawed at her. Fear of failing, of proving she was as small as she sometimes felt. I need to think about it, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. This is a lot. Caleb nodded, unsurprised. Of course. Take your time. He handed her a new business card, its edges crisp. My direct number. Call when you are ready. His eyes held hers, a quiet challenge in their depths. You are more than you think, Emily. The question is whether you believe it. Back on the 40th floor, Emily was folding towels in a suite when Sarah Collins appeared, her heels clicking like a metronome. Her expression was sharper than usual, her eyes glinting with something Emily could not quite name. Skepticism, perhaps, or envy. I heard you were called to the executive floor, Sarah said, her voice cool. Care to explain? Emily's hands stilled, the towel half folded in her grip. Mr. Morrison asked to see me. He offered me a consulting position with his company. The words felt foreign, as if they belonged to someone else's life. Sarah's eyebrows arched, her lips curling into a faint, disbelieving smile. Consulting? Emily, you are a housekeeper. These corporate types, they make promises they do not keep, especially to people like us. You need to be realistic. His world is not yours. The words were a blade, slicing into Emily's fragile hope. Sarah's tone softened, but the condescension remained. You are good at your job here. Reliable. Why risk that for something you are not prepared for? Emily's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice even. I have not decided yet, ma'am. I am just considering it. Sarah studied her, then shook her head. Do not be naive, Emily. Opportunities like this come with strings. Protect yourself. She turned and left, her words lingering like a storm cloud. Emily stood frozen, Sarah's doubts echoing her own. Was she naive to believe Caleb saw something real in her? Or was Sarah right, and this was a mirage, a fleeting kindness from a man who would forget her by tomorrow? As she resumed her work, the business card in her pocket felt heavier, a talisman of a future she could barely imagine. Caleb's faith in her was a lifeline, but Sarah's warning was a tether, pulling her back to the safety of the known. The elevator ride back to the service corridor was silent, but inside Emily a battle raged, between the woman who had learned to be invisible and the one who dared to be seen. The Grand Metropolitan Service Corridor was a cocoon of routine, its gray walls and humming fluorescence a stark contrast to the opulence of the guest floors. Emily Carter sat on a folding chair during her lunch break, the linoleum cold beneath her, Caleb Morrison's business card turning over in her hands. The embossed letters, CEO TechBridge Solutions, gleamed under the harsh light, a silent challenge to the doubts that had kept her awake all night. Sarah Collins's warning echoed in her mind. His world is not yours. Yet Caleb's words, "You are more than you think," stirred a hunger she had long suppressed, a longing to reclaim the dreams she had buried for her family's sake. The card felt alive, a key to a door she was terrified to open. Emily slipped the card into her pocket and pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she opened a browser. She typed TechBridge Solutions into the search bar, her heart pounding as the screen filled with articles, videos, and glossy images of cutting-edge devices. TechBridge's AI-powered hearing aids had transformed lives, making communication accessible for millions. Headlines praised Caleb as a visionary, a man who blended technology with humanity. But it was a conference video that stopped her cold. Caleb stood on a stage, his voice resonant as he spoke of human-centered design. The most sophisticated technology is useless if it does not address real human needs in real human contexts. That requires not just expertise, but understanding, lived experience. Emily replayed the clip, his words resonating with her own life. Her years of signing with Michael, navigating the deaf community, bridging worlds with her hands. She leaned back, the chair creaking under her weight. Caleb's offer was not charity. It was recognition of the expertise she had honed in the shadows. But the leap from housekeeper to consultant felt like crossing a chasm, with Sarah's skepticism and her own self-doubt waiting to pull her down. Emily closed her eyes, picturing Michael's grin, his unwavering belief. You gave up your dream so I could chase mine. The thought of his future, engineering school, a life unbound by their family's struggles, steadied her. If she could sacrifice for him, could she not also fight for herself? The corridor door swung open, snapping Emily back to the present. Mrs. Judith Harper stepped inside, her silver hair catching the light, her eyes sharp with concern. You are hiding out here, Emily. That is not like you. She sat across from her, the air between them heavy with unspoken questions. Emily hesitated, then pulled out the business card. Mr. Morrison offered me a job. Consulting on his AI project. I want to say yes, but I am scared, Judith. What if I am not enough? Her voice cracked, the admission raw. Judith's expression softened, but her voice was firm. I have watched you for 3 years, Emily. You work harder than anyone, not because you love cleaning, but because you love your family. That same strength is what makes you enough for this. She leaned forward, her gaze piercing. Fear is a liar. It tells you to stay small, to stay safe. But you were never meant to be invisible. Emily swallowed, Judith's words a balm to her fraying nerves. Sarah thinks I am naive, that I do not belong in his world. Sarah is protecting her own fears, Judith said, her tone sharp. She sees your potential, and it reminds her of what she never chased. Do not let her doubts become yours. She stood, brushing her hands on her apron. You have a choice, Emily. Stay here where you know the rules, or step into the unknown where you might just change the world. Judith's words lingered as Emily returned to her cart, the afternoon shift blurring into a haze of routine. But the spark Judith had fanned refused to die. By evening, Emily was back in her family's apartment, the kitchen table a battlefield of doubt and hope. Michael sat across from her, his calculus homework abandoned, his eyes bright with curiosity as she recounted the meeting with Caleb, Sarah's warning, Judith's encouragement. You have to do this, Em, Michael signed, his gestures emphatic. This is your chance. Not just for you, but for Mom. For all of us. He paused, his hands slowing. The money could help Mom cut back her hours, get her back looked at properly. But more than that, you deserve this. You are not just a housekeeper, you are my sister, and you are brilliant. Emily's throat tightened, Michael's faith a mirror to the belief she had lost. What if I fail, Michael? What if I prove Sarah right, that I am out of my depth? Her signs were small, hesitant, as if the fear might consume her if she gave it too much space. Michael reached across the table, squeezing her hand. What if you succeed? What if this is the moment you stop hiding? His grin was infectious, a reminder of the boy who had faced his own darkness and emerged stronger. You taught me that the worst thing is not failing, it is never trying, so try, Em. For you. The room fell silent, the hum of the refrigerator a steady pulse. Emily looked at the business card, its edges worn from her touch. Michael was right. The fear of failure was a shadow, but the fear of regret, of wondering what might have been, was a weight she could no longer bear. She picked up her phone, her fingers steady as she dialed Caleb's number. Her heart raced, but she pressed call before doubt could stop her. Caleb answered on the second ring, his voice warm but expectant. Emily, I was hoping you would call. Mr. Morrison, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. I have thought about your offer. If it is still open, I would like to try. It is absolutely open, Caleb replied, a smile audible in his tone. Can you come to our office tomorrow afternoon, say 3 o'clock? We can discuss the details and show you what we are working on. Yes, sir. 3 o'clock, I will be there. Emily paused, then added, Thank you for seeing something in me. You are welcome, Emily. But the truth is, you showed me something first. I am just returning the favor. The call ended, and Emily set the phone down, her hands trembling with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Michael watched her, his grin widening as he signed, So when do you start changing the world? Emily laughed, the sound startling in the quiet kitchen. Tomorrow, she signed, the word feeling real for the first time. I start tomorrow. The fear was still there, a quiet current beneath her resolve, but it was overshadowed by a new sensation, hope, sharp and vivid, like the first light of dawn. As she lay in bed that night, the city's hum filtering through her window, Emily traced the contours of her decision. She saw Michael's future, her mother's relief, the possibility of a life where her hands could do more than fold towels. But more than that, she saw herself, not as the invisible housekeeper, but as a woman capable of stepping into the unknown. The Grand Metropolitan had been her cage, but Caleb's offer was a key. Tomorrow, she would turn it, and whatever lay beyond, success, failure, or something in between, she would face it with her eyes wide open. The TechBridge Solutions office was a whirlwind of controlled chaos, its open-plan space humming with the clatter of keyboards and the low murmur of engineers debating code. Whiteboards lined the walls, scrawled with algorithms and diagrams, while prototype devices, sleek, futuristic hearing aids, glinted under the fluorescent lights. Emily Carter stood at the center of it all, her navy dress a stark contrast to the casual hoodies of the tech team, her hands clasped tightly to steady her nerves. It was her third week consulting for TechBridge, and the initial terror of stepping into this world had begun to fade, replaced by a quiet thrill. Yet today, as she prepared to critique their AI interface, the weight of her inexperience pressed against her, a reminder of Sarah Collins' warning. His world is not yours. Caleb Morrison had ushered her into the conference room, his gray eyes bright with anticipation. "Emily, I want you to walk through the interface," he said, sliding a tablet across the table. The screen displayed a grid of ASL gestures, each mapped to a corresponding meaning, the AI's recognition software humming in the background. "Tell us what works, what does not. Be brutal. We need your perspective." Emily nodded, her throat tight. The room was filled with engineers, men and women with advanced degrees from places she had only read about, their gazes a mix of curiosity and skepticism. She took a breath, her fingers brushing the tablet as she began. "The system is impressive," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "But it is missing nuance. For example, this gesture," she demonstrated, her hands forming a sharp, angled sign. "The AI reads it as confused, but it is frustrated. The difference is emotional context, which matters in real conversations." She moved to another example, her hands flowing with the ease of years spent signing with Michael. "And here, the regional variations. In some communities, this sign for family shifts slightly. The AI needs to account for that." The engineers leaned forward, scribbling notes, their initial skepticism giving way to focus. Caleb watched, a faint smile tugging at his lips. For 2 hours, Emily dissected the interface, pointing out flaws she knew from daily life, gestures misread, contexts ignored, cultural subtleties overlooked. Her nervousness dissolved, replaced by a clarity born of lived experience. This was not about credentials. It was about understanding the world she and Michael navigated every day. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then erupted in questions. "How do we adjust for speed?" one engineer asked. "What about shorthand signs families develop?" another added. Emily answered each, her confidence growing with every word. As the session ended, Caleb clapped her on the shoulder. "That was exceptional, Emily. You have given us a roadmap we did not have before." His praise warmed her, but a flicker of doubt lingered. Could she keep this up? Or was this a fluke, a lucky moment before her limitations were exposed? Later that morning, Emily was back at the Grand Metropolitan, cleaning the lobby restrooms, the scent of bleach sharp in her nose. Her dual existence, consultant by afternoon, housekeeper by morning, was a tightrope, each role pulling her in opposite directions. She scrubbed a sink, her mind replaying the TechBridge session when raised voices drifted through the partially open door. She froze, recognizing Sarah Collins' clipped tone and Caleb's measured one, coming from the corridor near the elevator bank. "Mr. Morrison, I respect your intentions," Sarah was saying, her voice low but sharp. "But Emily Carter is not qualified for the role you are giving her. She is a housekeeper, not a technical consultant. She lacks the education, the experience. You are setting her up to fail." Emily's heart sank, her hands gripping the sponge. She should have closed the door, walked away, but her feet refused to move. Caleb's response was calm, but edged with steel. "Miss Collins, I am qualified to judge what my company needs. Emily's insights have improved our AI in ways our previous consultants, PhDs from top universities, failed to achieve. She understands the human element of this technology, something no degree can teach." Sarah's tone grew colder. "I am sure she is helpful with basic feedback, but serious development requires credentials, expertise. She is out of her depth, and you know it." "Credentials are not the same as capability," Caleb shot back. Emily has contributed more in 3 weeks than our last consultant did in 6 months. Her perspective is why our accuracy has jumped to 87%. If anything, she is exactly what this project needs. Emily's cheeks burned, a mix of pride and mortification. She had not meant to eavesdrop, but Sarah's words cut deep, echoing her own fears. She was about to slip back to her work when Caleb's voice came closer, softer now. "Emily, I know you are in there. Can we talk?" She emerged, her face flushed, the sponge still in her hand. "I am sorry, Mr. Morrison. I did not mean to overhear." Her voice was small, her eyes fixed on the floor. "You have nothing to apologize for," Caleb said, his tone gentle but firm. "What Sarah said, it is not true. You are not out of your depth. You are proving that every day." He leaned against the wall, his suit jacket creasing slightly. "But I want to offer you something more. In 3 weeks, TechBridge is opening a permanent office here. We need a director of user experience, someone who can ensure our technology serves the deaf community's real needs. The salary is $90,000 a year, plus benefits and equity. I want you for that role." Emily's breath caught, the number staggering, nearly triple her hotel wages. The title, director, felt like a foreign language, one she was not fluent in. "Mr. Morrison, I am not qualified. I never finished college. I do not know how to lead a team or—" "Emily," Caleb interrupted, his eyes locking onto hers. "When I was a boy, I was deaf for 2 years after an accident. Those years taught me what isolation feels like, what communication means. I built TechBridge to bridge that gap, but I need people like you, people who live that truth, to make it real. You have already shown you can do this. The question is, are you ready to step up?" Her mind raced, Sarah's doubts clashing with Caleb's faith. The role was a leap, not just from housekeeper to consultant, but to a leader in a world she barely understood. Yet the past 3 weeks, solving problems, seeing her ideas take shape, had awakened something in her, a sense of purpose she had thought lost. "What if I fail?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then we will figure it out together," Caleb said. "Failure is not trying something hard and stumbling. Failure is staying where you do not belong because you are afraid." He paused, his gaze steady. "You belong here, Emily. With us." Emily looked at her hands, rough from years of cleaning, but capable of so much more. She thought of Michael, his dreams within reach because of her sacrifices. She thought of her mother, whose health might improve with better care. And she thought of herself, the woman who had signed, "You are not alone," through a glass door, not knowing it would change everything. "I need to give the hotel 2 weeks' notice," she said finally, her voice trembling but resolute. "But yes, I will take the position." Caleb's face broke into a smile, rare and genuine. "Welcome to TechBridge, Director Carter." He extended his hand and she shook it, the gesture sealing a pact with her future. As he walked away, Emily stood in the restroom, the sponge forgotten, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and triumph. Sarah's words still stung, but they were drowned out by a new truth. She was no longer invisible, and the world was about to see what she could do. The Grand Metropolitan's housekeeping office was a cramped, windowless room, its walls lined with schedules and cleaning protocols. Emily Carter stood before Sarah Collins, her resignation letter trembling slightly in her hand. The air was thick with the scent of bleach and stale coffee, and Sarah's sharp eyes flicked from the letter to Emily's face, her expression a mix of disbelief and disapproval. 2 weeks ago, Emily had accepted Caleb Morrison's offer to become TechBridge Solutions Director of User Experience, a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. Now, as she faced Sarah, the weight of that choice settled into her bones, both exhilarating and daunting. "Resigning?" Sarah's voice was cool, her lips pursing as she scanned the letter. To work for Mr. Morrison's company, I presume. Emily, I warned you about getting caught up in promises that sound too good to be true. She set the letter down, her gaze piercing. You are good at your job here, reliable. Why throw that away for something you are not prepared for? Emily's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. This is not about promises, Ms. Collins. It is about opportunity. I have been working with TechBridge for weeks, and my contributions are making a difference. This is where I belong. The words felt bold, almost foreign, but they carried a truth she had only begun to embrace. Sarah's skepticism had once shaken her, but now it was a challenge she refused to let define her. Sarah leaned back, her fingers tapping the desk. I hope you know what you are doing, Emily. Corporate worlds do not forgive mistakes the way we do here. Her tone softened, but the warning lingered. You are choosing a path with no safety net. I understand, Emily said, her hands clasped to hide their tremor. Thank you for everything I have learned here. She turned and left, the door clicking shut behind her, a final note in the symphony of her old life. As she stepped into the service corridor, the weight of Sarah's words clung to her, but so did a spark of defiance. She was no longer the invisible housekeeper. She was Emily Carter, director, and she would prove it. Not to Sarah, but to herself. 3 weeks later, Emily stood in TechBridge's new permanent office, a sleek space of glass and steel overlooking the city's skyline. Her nameplate, Emily Carter, Director of User Experience, gleamed on her office door, a symbol of a transformation she still struggled to believe. Today was a pivotal moment, a demonstration of TechBridge's updated AI interface to a group of beta testers, including deaf community leaders. The interface, refined by Emily's insights, now boasted a 90% accuracy rate for conversational ASL, a leap that had stunned even the most skeptical engineers. Yet as she adjusted her blazer, the fabric unfamiliar against her skin, a familiar doubt crept in. What if the demo failed? What if she faltered under the weight of her new title? Caleb stood beside her in the conference room, his presence a steady anchor. You are ready for this, he said, his gray eyes meeting hers. This demo is as much your work as anyone's. Show them what you have built. His confidence bolstered her, but the stakes felt impossibly high. The room filled with testers, advocates, educators, and users whose lives depended on technology like this. Emily took a breath, her hands steady as she began. Good afternoon, she said, her voice clear and strong. Our goal at TechBridge is to create technology that does not just translate signs, but understands people. She launched the interface, demonstrating how it captured the speed and nuance of natural ASL conversations. She showed a video of Michael using the system, his signs for family and dream rendered with emotional clarity, the AI preserving his humor and warmth. This is not about code, she said, her gaze sweeping the room. It is about connection, about ensuring every voice, signed or spoken, is heard. The testers' reactions were immediate. Nods, smiles, rapid signing among themselves. One advocate, a woman with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, signed, "This is the first time I have seen technology that feels like it was made with us, not for us." The room erupted in applause, and Emily's chest swelled with pride, the doubt that had haunted her dissolving in the face of their approval. Caleb caught her eye, his nod a silent affirmation. You did this. As the testers dispersed, an engineer approached, his notebook filled with feedback. Ms. Carter, your regional variation adjustments were a game changer. We are already planning the next iteration. The words were a lifeline, proof that her place here was earned. Yet as she gathered her notes, a quiet voice whispered, Can you sustain this? That evening, Emily sat in her apartment, the city's lights glinting through the window. Michael was sprawled on the couch, his laptop open to an engineering scholarship application, his eyes bright with possibility. "You killed it today, Em," he signed, his grin wide. "I saw the video you sent. That tech is going to change lives." "You are changing lives." Emily smiled, but her hands hesitated as she signed back. "I am trying, Michael, but sometimes I wonder if I am enough for this. It is so big, and I am still me." The admission felt raw, a crack in the confidence she had worn all day. Michael set his laptop aside, his expression serious. "You are enough because you are you. You learned ASL for me, gave up your degree for us. Now you are building something that helps people like me. That is not small. That is everything." He paused, his hands steady. "You are not alone in this. You have Caleb, your team, me. Keep going." His words were a tether, pulling her back from the edge of doubt. She thought of Caleb's offer, not just a job, but a chance to shape the future. She thought of the testers' faces, their gratitude a mirror to her own purpose. The fear was still there, a shadow she could not fully banish, but it was no longer the loudest voice. She signed, "Thank you, Michael. I needed that." Caleb's voice came back to her from their conversation weeks ago. "Failure is not trying something hard and stumbling. Failure is staying where you do not belong." She did not belong in the Grand Metropolitan's service corridors anymore. She belonged here, in this new world of possibility, where her hands could build bridges and her voice could matter. As she looked at Michael, his optimism a beacon, Emily felt the spark of her new identity take root. Tomorrow she would face the challenges of her role, meetings, travel, the weight of leadership. But tonight, she let herself believe she could rise to them. The Grand Metropolitan's grand ballroom was a cathedral of opulence, its crystal chandeliers casting prisms across polished marble floors, its walls draped in silk that whispered of wealth. Emily Carter stood backstage, her navy suit tailored to her frame, her hands clasped to quell the tremor of nerves. Today, she was not a housekeeper slipping through service corridors, but a featured speaker at a conference on workplace diversity. Her name, Emily Carter, Director of User Experience, Tech Bridge Solutions, printed in bold on the program. The journey from invisibility to this moment felt like a dream, yet the weight of the audience beyond the curtain grounded her. She was here to tell her story, to challenge assumptions, to prove that potential could thrive in the most unexpected places. Emily adjusted her earpiece, the hum of the crowd filtering through the velvet curtain. Mrs. Judith Harper sat in the front row, now a part-time TechBridge consultant, her silver hair gleaming under the lights. Michael, her brother, was beside her, his scholarship to engineering school secured by TechBridge's foundation, his eyes bright with pride. Even Sarah Collins was out there, her presence a reminder of the doubts Emily had overcome. The past 18 months had transformed her, consulting, directing, leading, but this speech was her crucible, a chance to share the truth she had learned. Talent was universal, but opportunity was not. The stage manager signaled, and Emily took a breath, her heart pounding as she stepped into the spotlight. The room fell silent, hundreds of faces, executives, advocates, students, turning toward her. She gripped the podium, her voice steady as she began. 18 months ago, I was cleaning rooms in this very hotel. I was invisible, part of the machinery that kept this place running. But I carried a skill, honed for my brother Michael, who is deaf. American Sign Language was my bridge to him, but I never imagined it could bridge me to a new life. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room, finding Judith's encouraging nod, Michael's grin. I was a linguistics student, one semester from a degree, when my family's needs forced me to drop out. I took this job to pay for my mother's medical bills, to ensure Michael could chase his dreams. I thought mine were lost until a guest, Mr. Caleb Morrison, saw me sign through a balcony window and offered me a chance to consult for TechBridge Solutions. Her voice grew stronger, the memory of that moment fueling her. I was terrified. I had no degree, no corporate experience. My supervisor warned me I was out of my depth. I believed her at first. But I took the risk, and it changed everything. Emily clicked to a slide, a video of TechBridge's latest AI interface playing on the massive screen. It showed Michael signing with their mother, the AI capturing his humor, his warmth, his personality. This technology exists because someone valued lived experience as much as formal education, she said. As TechBridge's Director of User Experience, I have helped create tools that do not just translate signs, but facilitate connection between deaf and hearing, between families, between worlds. But this is not just my story. It is a call to action. Her voice rose, resonant with conviction. Every organization has people like I was, talented but invisible, their potential obscured by job titles or assumptions. The question is not whether they exist, but whether we are willing to look beyond our biases to find them. Companies that do will not just be more diverse, they will be more innovative, more human. She clicked to a final slide, a photo of TechBridge's team, including herself, standing with deaf community leaders. The silent language of possibility speaks to everyone. We just need to listen. The room erupted in applause, the sound rolling over her like a wave. Emily's chest tightened, not with fear but with triumph. She had bared her soul, and they had heard her. As she stepped off the stage, an investor approached, his suit impeccable, his voice earnest. Ms. Carter, that was the most compelling case for user-centered design I have seen in 20 years. Your work is not just a product, it is a movement. Emily thanked him, her smile genuine, but her eyes sought Michael, whose proud nod was worth more than any praise. Backstage, Emily sipped water, the adrenaline still coursing through her. Judith approached, her eyes gleaming with warmth. You were magnificent, Emily. I always knew you were meant for more than folding towels. She squeezed Emily's arm, her touch a reminder of the faith that had carried her here. Michael joined them, his hands flying in excited ASL. You owned that stage, Em. I am so proud. He hugged her, his embrace fierce, and Emily laughed, the sound light with relief. Thank you, Michael, for believing in me when I could not. As they spoke, Sarah Collins appeared, her expression softer than Emily had ever seen. She cleared her throat, her hands clasped tightly. Emily, that was remarkable. I owe you an apology. I was wrong to doubt you, to try to hold you back. I saw you as a housekeeper, not as the woman you are. I am sorry. Emily studied Sarah, seeing not just remorse, but a flicker of self-reflection. We all make assumptions, Mrs. Collins, she said, her voice gentle but firm. The important thing is being willing to change them. Thank you for saying that. Sarah nodded, a weight lifting between them, and walked away, her heels echoing in the quiet. That evening, Emily and Michael sat on their apartment's fire escape, the city's lights sprawling below like a sea of stars. A cool breeze carried the scent of asphalt and distant rain, and Emily leaned against the railing, a glass of iced tea in her hand. Michael signed, his gestures lazy but content. You did it, Em. You told the world who you are. What is next? Emily smiled, her heart full. More work, more challenges. TechBridge is expanding, and I will be traveling to meet user groups, shaping new projects. But tonight, I just want to be here, with you. She paused, her hands slowing. I used to think my value came from what I gave up, my degree, my dreams, but I have learned it comes from what I do with what I have. And I have you, Mom, this chance to make a difference. Michael's eyes shone, his signs deliberate. You have always made a difference. Now the world knows it too. He nudged her shoulder, his grin teasing. Director Carter? Sounds pretty good. Emily laughed, the sound carrying into the night. The Grand Metropolitan loomed in the distance, its glass facade a reminder of the life she had left behind. She was no longer invisible, no longer bound by the limits others had set. She was Emily Carter, a bridge between worlds, a woman who had learned that potential was not a gift bestowed, but a fire kindled by courage and connection. As the city hummed below, she felt the truth settle into her. She was not alone, and neither was anyone else brave enough to chase their own silent language of possibility. A nervous waitress thanked the billionaire in sign language. The next day, she was invited to the Rooftop office.